All right, traders, good afternoon. This is Christian Farmer, Strategic Trade Group. Happy Friday. This is your end of day as well as end of week market recap for you. And I'll try to provide a little bit of context and commentary about some of the moves that we saw this week, which were pretty darn interesting, as well as today as well. So let's start with, well, first of all, risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we need, everything that I'm going through is for information purpose only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. We only have 3 more days of the month of July. July has 31 days. We've got 3 more days, a lot more earnings reports to go through. But I think at this point you can kind of look to see at some of the month-to-date stats, and they're pretty interesting. I mean, first of all, I mean, just crazy. I mean, this has been one of the biggest rotation months that I've seen in a long time. You've got IWM up 10% for the month, right? And that brings up IWM up close to 12% for the year. So all of the gains for the small caps this year have basically come from the last few weeks. Just pretty amazing when you think about that. And mid caps also have had a pretty good month, up 5%. Don't worry, and I'll recap all of this a little bit more in detail once we get to the 31st. We'll also be doing a webinar. We held a trial for the MarketWebs on TradingView, and we had a lot of people sign up for that, a lot of interest for it. So we'll be giving a webinar on the 1st, talking about what the value areas are telling us for the new month of August, and we'll certainly go through not just the U.S. indices, but we'll go through a lot of the macro areas, like what bonds are telling us, and all the commodities and so forth. And then we'll talk about sectors and maybe some single stocks as well. So that should be on, probably we'll get that done on the 1st of the month for members. So if you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, make sure you sign up for that. And as always, we answer any questions. But it will really be kind of geared towards the value areas and market profiles and what volume at price is telling us. So just to kind of continue with this, I mentioned that the small and mid caps outperformed, and Q's down 3.4%. And it almost kind of brings everything back in line, because SPY is essentially flat for this month. And look at the difference. I mean, we had big outperformance before for the Qs, not any longer. The S&P is now in front of that. When you kind of go a little bit further down the line, value has had a really big month. So large, it's mainly large cap growth down 3.3%. And value up about 4.1%. I was looking at this, just to look at some of these ratios. And again, I love how TradingView allows us to do this. But look at the move, look at the move back, and kind of a violent move back in terms of value outperforming. And it's kind of interesting because when you think value, it is the financials and banks, but it's also energy stocks and consumer staples. But I'll tell you, like, energy hasn't been anything to really jump up and down about. It's been okay, but really the majority of the performance has been coming from banks and maybe some healthcare and maybe a little bit of staples too. But just kind of interesting to see what we've seen. And even value, when we get to small caps, and break small caps apart, value versus growth, value outperformed there too, up 12.5%. Growth, nothing to sneeze at here. 8.5%. Bonds haven't really done much this month. So it's not really been the move in interest rates. Perhaps it is the in terms of on the long end of the curve, there really hasn't been that big of a move, but it's more so that the Fed will be easing, and that is similar to what we kind of I think what we've seen when we look at the IWM chart at this point, what we saw back in November, when this Fed meeting caused this to move, right? And that was when Jay Powell came out and basically said that they were going to really start cutting interest rates, and then he dialed that back. But and hence we had this huge move in small caps, which, by the way, was greater at the end of last year, and then walked that back, and small caps really did nothing. So so if you're looking for like the reasoning about why the small cap move has happened, probably a little bit of positioning, which we've talked a lot about in these end of day videos, where there's a lot of shorts that were in small caps a couple of weeks ago. A lot of those have covered, but it's really about this and short-term interest rates. And, again, these are the overnight rates that the Fed controls, and they are implying that there's definitely going to be a cut that happens in September. So we don't know what we're going to get after that. And I think, we have a Fed meeting on Wednesday. The Fed has been in a quiet period, right? They're not going to, there's very little, I don't want to say not because nothing is over 100%. And you could see, there's about a 95.5% chance that they're not going to cut interest rates on Wednesday. I would agree with that. The Fed doesn't want to shock the market. Unless something really big is going on, and there's not really anything big going on. So they'll probably set the stage for a September rate cut. And then really what I think everybody will be interested to hear is whether or not that's going to start, one, cut after cut after cut. That's certainly some of what the small caps are implying. And but we'll have to listen to the press conference for that. And if he says, hey, maybe we'll do one, and then that's it for a while, you might actually see the small cap sell off. There's a great question today from we do Q&As on Friday with members. We do a Zoom conference with Q&A. And there's a great question about, hey, will it be a sell the news event for small caps? It possibly could. It's really going to depend on how dovish Powell will be. And so while we're talking about that, let's go over the indices and talk about where we stand at this point. And we'll start with the S&P futures, which let's make sure we got the daily chart up here. And of course, we'll be doing a Sunday video for members where I'll go over a little bit more detail. But notice we kind of close right at this 50-day moving average. So, and I am adjusting for contracts. So I wasn't before, but I am adjusting for contract changes. And notice that you got we're right at that 50-day moving average. And it looks like when we do adjust for contract changes, it does look like the bearish 80% rule fulfilled there on the downside for S&P. So price right at that 50-day moving average, and did not close on the highs, did not retake any of the other indices too. So, not indices, moving averages. So it's kind of a wait and see a little bit, right? And we talked about the VIX yesterday. Very similar looking candle besides this crazy wick that happened, which looks like an error. But very, when we look at this, right, this is very similar. This candle that happened yesterday, Thursday, was very similar to the one that we got on Friday, right? And then notice the VIX on the day after that, which was Monday. And look at how similar today's was. So I don't know, again, we need more information about whether this is going to kind of end the big, up move in volatility in the S&P. We'll have to see. For now, I don't think that you can make that determination. Maybe we need a couple more days, and I really think, to see this break back below these moving averages. But that's what that looks like. I also like to show the VVIX because sometimes that may signal something to us, and it really hasn't. A little bit of more of a move down than we saw on Monday, but still elevated, right? So, and same thing for the VIX, still elevated. Where 16 is, I think we'll need to see it go under 15 and stay under 15. But that's just me. All right, so that's the S&P. Qs. So again, a lot has to be determined yet. The Qs did not make it back into the value area, so a little bit of rejection there. And this was, I thought, very interesting for the day. Right? Again, these timeframes will kind of give you some information, but notice what happened here. Right? We got to the top of, nice little rally this morning until about, similar to yesterday, until about 1 o'clock, but not as dramatic of a sell-off as yesterday, which was here. Right. And we kind of just spilled lower for the remainder of the day. So we didn't spill lower, but of course we got rejected there at the top of today's value area. That's something that we caught, and I had mentioned in the room. We actually try to go higher here. Look at this candle, right? And There's still some sellers in there and still taking advantage. So uh, that'll be interesting. And I think as we head towards next week in the Fed meeting, whether or not how many rate cuts the Fed is going to do might dictate some of the price action next week. But as of now, you really don't have anything majorly to kind of hang your hat on here, both in the S&P and in the Qs, because we did not close back inside the value area for the month. And what I was noticing earlier too is there's so many names or areas that were just moving up very nicely for the day. But they really didn't include tech, and they really didn't include like the semis, names that have been beaten down. They're just having a hard time turning the corner. So probably just need more patience with that. And sometimes it just takes a while. And you just don't want to be the first one in there buying the dip. And if you are, make sure make sure that you've got a stop. IWM, which again leaning to the upside here. Different looking, of course, with the gapped up, which makes today, if you came in today with not holding very many positions, very difficult. Because the once again, a lot of the moves are coming in the after hours move market. And by the way, that's just how it is, right? That's not anything new. That's just the majority of how it is. And if you're not familiar with this concept, let me know. I'm happy to answer questions. But the alpha is made in the after hours. During the day, it's a little bit different, right? And that's why we tend to try to look for swing trades as the day progresses, because we want to be putting on things. You're not going to catch some names, not all names, but for the most part, there are names that trend over the day, and those are great. That's great when that happens. Like 3M was a great example of that. But for the most part, it's the alpha. It's the overnight where all the alpha is made, and that's why I'm a swing trader and not really a day trader. But hey, everybody does their own thing. But take a look, for example, right from the open. So SPY was up 1.1%. The majority of the gains happened going, in the overnight market. Now it did rally, but the same thing with the Qs. The Qs were up 1% today. Look at what it did intraday. Essentially nothing. Now, Diamonds had a good day today. Same thing with the small caps, up 1.66% today. Very little movement over from 9:30 to 4 o'clock. Right. So again, this isn't every day as dramatic, but if you look at a chart or if you Google overnight moves versus intraday moves, you'll see that this has been going on now for 30, 40 years at this point, for as long as, that goes past my trading career, but there's nothing new with that. All right. So I stopped there at the small caps on the 1 hour chart because this 323 level was a barrier, but we did break through that. And essentially we're basically back to the highs from last week, right? A lot of movement, buying the dip worked. Where we opened essentially was on the lows, and there was tradable opportunities there. What else do I want to go over? I'm not going to go through sectors because I'm going to do that in the weekend member video. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we're seeing for earnings. And I have to say, like, it's been impressive. Some names, now not every name, because of course, right? You could look at the down names, right? And DXCM was down 40%. There's a few other names that got hit today. SAIA, which is a trucking name, was down 19%. APPF was down 11%. BAH and LPLA were down pretty decently. There's actually a decent amount of names that were down over 5% today. So, again, like you're getting some really big moves on earnings, but look at the move in 3M today, up 23%. Look at the move in MHK. It's a flooring company, up 19%. KNSLR, another one. So I've got about 35 to 40 names at this point that are on the strong earnings list that I put together every quarter. So and look at Bristol Myers, up 11%. Right. And it's up to you if you want to play some of these names. I know some traders I see on Twitter, they're like, I only trade growth names. Okay, that's fine, but you're kind of missing out on some big outsized moves. And there's nothing wrong with trading some of these names because the moves are ginormous. And it's funny, some of these traders will slide in a couple areas that are really value, but they'll call them growth so that they can cheat and trade them because they like them. But it is what it is. There's a lot of outside moves that are happening. GEV made a nice maintains buy. This was not an earnings name, but again, just look at how many. So I talked about how many names were down 5% today, which was, what, about a half a dozen or so. But look at how many names were up over 5% today. Right. Lennox, which is they make AC units. The reason why I knew that is was at my mom's this week, and they've replaced one of her AC units, and yeah, I mean, you see them all over the place. FTAI, so this to me has been a standout area today. This, besides regional banks, which I just don't have a lot of motivation in the regional banks, but some people do, I guess. And look at the regional banks going up. That's pretty amazing. So yeah, very, very, very strong. GE is a name. I'll just go through a couple trades that I've been in. I bought the dip in GE a bit. Um, and this is working out quite nicely. Ugly looking bar. I don't know what that was all about the other day. I got caught in that, and look at it rebound quite nicely. FTAI, another one that I think that's a new closing high. Didn't close on the absolute highs, but the trend is strong there. LMT is another one. I mean, it's pretty amazing, this group. And RTX is another one that finished at a new high. So I think that group is pretty good. I think XLV, which didn't close on the highs today, but I'll be watching this group next week. Pretty strong in terms of the overall trend in here. And yeah, so that looks good to me as well. And that's it. I'm not going to go through too many other areas other than maybe software, which we talked about in yesterday's video. That has been another. So I'm just kind of covering a couple areas that have had really good strength in terms of earnings. It's the aerospace group. It's been software, ServiceNow out to new highs, and MANH had a nice day today, which I got long this name yesterday on this like inside type candle. But a lot of names in this and in software are coming out with good earnings. So I think that's nice to see some strength there. And then we already talked a little bit about healthcare. All right, guys, that is it for the oh, I did not show the performance for the week. Here we go. We already talked about how value outperformed growth. SPY finished down for the week. Interesting when you look at the RSP, which is the equally weighted S&P, that finished up the inverse. It was up about 0.8 of a percentage point. Small caps, very nice gains. Q's down and a big down another week. International areas were down. I think that should be positive for T. I think TLT was up 1%. I may have an error in there, so I need to correct that. But in terms of the performers, there's a defense and aerospace, regional banks, which we talked a bit about. The regional banks have been doing better than the larger banks. And this ETF, by the way, is not large bank, it's large banks, it's all banks. The home builders, I wanted to talk about this just for a second. You know, looking at the performance in the home builders, and it's been very impressive. I haven't participated as much as I should have in this group. I did back in here. I've just have been seeing too many negative reports about real estate. But again, it just kind of shows you that no one really knows what is going to happen on a day-to-day basis. And, if you think that you're going to outsmart the market by listening to some of the economic reports and so forth, then you miss out on trades because the market will go wherever it wants to. I had somebody the other day, and I get this request quite a bit. Hey, what do you think about this stock? Do you think it could go up in the next 2 weeks? I mean, anything is possible, right? But you need to have a better system than asking somebody on Twitter about whether whether you think a stock is going to go up or not. That's not a system. And no one has a crystal ball. And asking people what they think about a stock in the next couple of weeks, it's a guessing game. And sure, someone could guess the right way, but basically the best way that I've learned to trade is just watch for strength, relative strength, and watch for moves and continuation, and understand where you're going to get out of a trade, and understand where your what you're going to do in terms of riding a trend, right? I would have not have said that this group would have been up again today and coming out to new highs, considering all the weak real estate. So again, you could try to rationalize a reason, but there's just more buyers than sellers. And maybe it's also the fact that the market is pricing in more rate cuts. And that may change once we get to Wednesday, but it's impossible to kind of predict. The best thing that you could do, in my opinion, is find, observe and try to be a little bit clever with some trade ideas because this was impressive. And I've been looking at names like Sherman-Williams, which had, this is another group that's been hitting on strong earnings. Sherman-Williams made a nice move. This is a name I'll be watching next week because it hasn't really done anything. This is Williams-Sonoma. Looking for this name to kind of get out of this area. But I mentioned Lennox earlier, and of course many home builders are at 50, have broken out decently at this point. PHM had a nice day. That's a new closing high there. So in any event, there's your sectors and underperformers. Semis down another 3.2%. Consumer discretionary. Very interesting to see home builders, the difference between home builders and consumer discretionary. But there you have it. All right, guys, that is it for the weekend video or the Friday end of week video. Have a great weekend, everybody, and please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend, all.